Let's start with McDonald's. You take a look at some of the results here. Comp sales coming in, the growth there coming in slower than expected, 1.9%. How much of what we learned this morning is a McDonald's specific problem versus just a macroeconomic problem?
Yeah, so great. Thanks for having me on, and really good question. So, look, McDonald's is seeing clearly a slowdown across several of its markets, the U.S. included, in many international, the large international markets. They're also seeing a slowdown among that lower-income consumer, and really all income cohorts are visiting less often. What's really interesting here is that McDonald's is calling this out, but we're not seeing it at Domino's. Domino's said the exact opposite yesterday. And Chipotle last week said the exact opposite. They're seeing growth across all income cohorts. So this does seem like maybe a little bit more QSR specific, or maybe a little bit more to McDonald's than it is necessarily across the entire industry. But they are definitely seeing a slowdown. It's pretty evident in the numbers that they posted this morning.
So interesting perspective there when it comes to the competitive landscape, to some of their peers who aren't having as tough of a time, which raises the question, I mean, what does McDonald's do here? You take a look, and it seems like they're maybe focusing on potentially a nationwide value menu, hinting at that in a call with investors. Would that be enough? What would the actual impact be?
So I think that is in the playbook, right? To push harder and harder on value. The value proposition, or the value messaging, really started in the fall last year, call it like October, and it intensified as we went through the year, and it has continued into 2024, and really even more intense in 2024 than it was late in 2023. We think it's going to continue for the balance of this year as they battle to get traffic back. But this value messaging, it takes several quarters to really start to work. So we're probably 2 quarters in. I think we get at least another quarter before we start to see any sort of response from the consumer, or maybe until we lap it come the fall. I don't think we're going to see any sort of rebound. In fact, McDonald's is calling for U.S. industry traffic and QSR to be negative. It was negative in the first quarter, and they expect it to be negative for the full year. So they're going to push hard on value messaging. I don't know that it's going to really turn the tide anytime soon.
So there is a light at the end of the tunnel, but we're not exactly there yet, maybe getting closer. But we know that McDonald's also has tried to push out into other parts of the day, into areas such as breakfast as well. I mean, when you're visiting stores and when you're talking to executives, how much of a sense do you have of that actually being meaningful?
Yeah, so what we heard from our franchisee checks was that breakfast, weekday breakfast and weekday lunch were soft. Those tend to skew more lower income consumers. We also heard that the value mix has doubled versus this time last year, so it's about 10% versus 5%. So value is becoming much more aggressive. They'll continue to push on that. They'll continue to find ways on value. But what's really interesting also is that their loyalty program is exploding in growth, and loyalty customers visit 3 times more often than traditional guests. So the more they add more to that loyalty, the more rewards customers, the better off they'll be. But again, I think it's still insignificant in terms of the overall traffic component, and it will take several more quarters, maybe even a year, to start to see this traffic turn and go the other way.